The Douglas DC-3 became something almost nobody expected in January 1990, when the first remanufactured example rolled out of a new 75,000 square foot hangar at Whitman Regional Airport in Oshkosh, Wisconsin, certified as a legally new aircraft under a fresh type certificate. Basler Turbo Conversions had stripped a decades-old airframe down to bare metal, replaced the majority of its structure, stretched the fuselage, and fitted two Pratt Whitney Canada PT6A-67R turboprop engines in place of the radial pistons the aircraft had flown with since the 1930s and 1940s. The company called the result the BT-67. More than 3 decades later, over 60 of these aircraft are working across 6 continents, hauling cargo, flying government surveillance missions, and supporting scientific fieldwork in places most airliners never go. One BT-67, operated by the Calgary-based charter carrier Kenn Borek Air, refuels every Antarctic summer at Amundsen Scott South Pole Station, hundreds of nautical miles from the nearest paved runway. The Australian Antarctic program charters its own BT-67s for intracontinental resupply flights, according to the program's operational guidance for expeditioners. A sister aircraft from the same operator has already survived what that environment can do to a turboprop. In December 2007, a Kenn Borek BT-67 was substantially damaged in a takeoff accident at Mount Patterson, Antarctica, and returned to service after a lengthy field repair. The airframe under that turbine cowling traces back to December 17, 1935, the day the DC-3's prototype first left the ground in Santa Monica, California, under Chief Test Pilot Carl Cover. Some of the aircraft Basler converts started life even earlier in the type's history as military C-47 Skytrains built during the Second World War, when Douglas and its licensees produced more than 10,000 examples in under a decade. An airplane engineered before commercial radar or jet propulsion existed is still being rebuilt today, decades after its original manufacturer stopped supporting it. Warren Basler, the man behind the conversion program, had spent the previous 3 decades running a DC-3 maintenance shop a few hundred feet from where his new turbine hangar now stood. He had come to believe the aviation industry had been asking the wrong question about this airplane for 40 years.
This account draws primarily on Basler Turbo Conversions' own published history and performance data, cross-checked against Wikipedia, the Smithsonian's Air and Space magazine, and South African Defense Trade Press covering the parallel conversion programs outside the United States. Where figures conflicted between sources, manufacturer data took priority. Nothing here is invented.
Warren Basler grew up around an airplane that, by later standards, was unremarkable. The Douglas DC-3 cruised at roughly 185 miles per hour, depending on load, according to the National Air and Space Museum, a figure consistent with Britannica's account of its handling. Its unpressurized cabin kept it flying below the weather rather than over it. Its normal range ran to about 1,500 miles, extendable with auxiliary tanks, and its useful load was measured in thousands of pounds, not the tens of thousands a modern regional turboprop carries. It seated between 21 and 32 passengers, had no weather radar, and no pressurization system. Its 2 piston engines, a Wright Cyclone or a Pratt Whitney Twin Wasp, depending on the variant, demanded far more scheduled maintenance than any turbine would. It could still cross the continental United States, from New York to Los Angeles, in about 18 hours with only 3 refueling stops, a figure confirmed by both Wikipedia and Britannica's reference entries on the type. The National Air and Space Museum credits its safety record, better than most aircraft of its era, largely to structural strength and strong single-engine handling rather than to any raw performance advantage. None of that stopped the DC-3 from becoming, by 1939, the aircraft carrying roughly 90% of the world's airline passengers, according to Wikipedia's summary of period airline statistics. It was also, according to the Smithsonian, among the first airliners able to turn a profit carrying passengers alone, without government mail subsidies propping up the route. Douglas and its licensees built more than 16,000 of them, civil and military combined, before production ended in 1945, with several thousand more built under license in the Soviet Union as the Lisanov Li-2 and in Japan as the Showa Nakajima L-2D. Airlines and cargo operators kept flying the piston version for decades afterward, not because nothing faster existed, but because the DC-3 kept working in conditions that grounded newer aircraft. Short strips, gravel runways, extreme cold, extreme heat. By the mid-1940s, All but 25 of the roughly 300 airliners then plying in the United States were DC-3s, according to Britannica's account of the domestic fleet at the time. Basler watched customers bring him tired DC-3s well into the 1970s and 1980s, still profitable, still airworthy, still without a real successor. The airplane's greatest asset was never its speed. It was that almost nothing else could do its job as reliably. That fact did not stop a series of other companies from trying to build the airplane that finally could. Jack Conroy tried first. The founder of Conroy Aircraft in Santa Barbara, California, already known for stretching a Boeing Stratocruiser into the oversized pregnant guppy cargo hauler, took a 1942-built former military DC-3 and on May 13, 1969, flew it fitted with two Rolls-Royce Dart Mk510 turboprops salvaged from a crashed United Airlines Vickers Viscount. Conroy's Turbo 3 raised cruise speed from about 170 miles per hour to 215. It appeared at the Paris Air Show weeks later. The Dart engines, mounted far forward to preserve the center of gravity, never delivered the performance Conroy wanted. In May 1977, he tried again on the same airframe, fitting three Pratt Whitney Canada PT6A-45 turboprops, two on the wings and one on the nose, creating the Tri-Turbo 3, which first flew that November at a cruise speed near 230 miles per hour. It found a niche flying maritime patrol demonstrations, painted to resemble the Coast Guard aircraft it was not. Only one was built. It never reached production, and Warren Basler himself later bought the surviving airframe out of an Arizona salvage yard in 1992, insisting it be preserved rather than scrapped. That single aircraft had already flown ski-equipped missions in both the Arctic and Antarctica during its operational life, according to aviation reference archives, working the same kind of polar routes the BT-67 would later make routine. Other attempts followed from other directions. The United States Aircraft Corporation flew its own prototype DC-3 Turbo Express on July 29, 1982, fitting Pratt Whitney Canada PT6A-45R engines to an extended forward fuselage. In South Africa, starting in 1989, an engineer named Gert de Klerk in this company, Wonder Air, began Project Felstone, intended to convert 40 South African Air Force C-47 Dakotas to PT6A-65R turboprop power. By the time the project wound down in 1994, only 12 airframes had actually reached the resulting C-47 TP standard, a fraction of the original target, though those 12 stayed in frontline maritime patrol service with 35 Squadron in Cape Town for nearly 3 more decades before finally being grounded in the 2020s for lack of a sustainable maintenance contract. Braddock Specialized Air Services later took over supporting that fleet from Wonder Air and continued marketing similar turboprop Dakota conversions to other governments. Each of these programs solved a genuine problem. None of them turned into a sustained manufacturing business that airlines, militaries, and cargo operators around the world could simply order from. Watching all of it from Oshkosh, Basler concluded that the missing piece was never a better single conversion. It was a company willing to treat the DC-3 as a repeatable product rather than a one-off experiment. If you're finding this useful, a subscribe helps more than you'd think. There's a lot more of this coming.
Basler had an advantage none of the earlier attempts fully had, an existing business built around this exact airframe. Basler Flight Service, the fixed-base operator he founded at Whitman Regional Airport in 1957, had spent 3 decades restoring and maintaining DC-3s for customers across North America, giving him a supply of airframes, a base of spare parts knowledge, and a roster of paying customers who already trusted his name. He formed Basler Turbo Conversions in 1988 specifically to convert DC-3 and C-47 airframes to turbine power on a certifiable, repeatable basis, and production began at the new Oshkosh facility in January 1990, with the FAA issuing the supporting supplemental type certificates that same month. The engineering itself was not radical on paper. 2 PT6A-67R turboprops, rated at 1,424 shaft horsepower for takeoff, replaced the DC-3's 1,200 horsepower Pratt Whitney R1830 radials. Basler's own published performance comparison shows that pay off directly. Standard cruise speed rose from about 173 knots to 205 knots. Useful load rose from roughly 9,000 pounds to 14,000 pounds, and single-engine service ceiling climbed from 9,000 feet to 14,000 feet. A 40-inch fuselage plug ahead of the wing added cabin volume for cargo or passengers, along with a modernized avionics package the original DC-3 never had.
Each conversion replaces the majority of the original aircraft, requires roughly 50,000 work hours over about 6 to 7 months, and draws on more than 6,500 parts Basler manufactures in-house, since spares for an airframe this old no longer exist anywhere else. Basler describes the resulting airframe as carrying zero accumulated fatigue damage under its FAA-approved maintenance program, a claim the company backs with its own illustrated parts catalog and airplane flight manual issued for every conversion. The PT6A engine family behind it all, according to Pratt Whitney Canada's own figures published by Basler, has logged over 400 million flying hours across more than 7,000 operators worldwide, with an in-flight shutdown rate of roughly 1 per 500,000 hours. The decision that mattered most was commercial rather than mechanical. Basler stopped marketing the BT-67 as a nostalgia airplane and sold it instead as mission equipment for jobs where a rugged, unpressurized short-field turboprop had no real substitute. The Colombian Air Force bought gunship variants for counter-narcotics operations. El Salvador, Guatemala, Mali, and Thailand bought transport and surveillance versions. The Alfred Wegener Institute flies BT-67s on research campaigns into Antarctica and the high Arctic, and the University of Texas Institute for Geophysics has used them for ice-penetrating radar surveys over Greenland. Geophysical survey operators, including Bell Geospace and Airborne Support, fly their own BT-67s for mineral and oil exploration work across remote terrain. Kenn Borek Air, founded by Kenn Borek in 1970 to support oil exploration flights across the Canadian Arctic, added BT-67s to a fleet already built around extreme environment flying, and now runs them into some of the continent's most remote research stations every austral summer.
The BT-67 was never the fastest or most efficient option for these missions. A modern regional turboprop like the ATR-72 cruises around 275 knots on markedly less fuel, per ATR's own figures, and outranges the BT-67's sub-1,000 nautical mile standard range. Its unpressurized cabin also caps it below modern airliner altitudes. On paper, it loses to a mainline comparison almost every time. But that was never the point. Its short-field capability, mechanical simplicity, and ability to run on skis or gravel in extreme cold solved problems no regional turboprop was built for. In April 2024, the State Department approved a potential BT-67 sale to Argentina to reinforce Antarctic operations, 34 years after the program's first conversion, proof of what the airplane is still needed for. Warren Basler didn't live to see it. He died in a March 1997 mid-air collision over Wisconsin during a marketing photo flight, along with 3 other Basler employees. Jack Conroy, who'd taken over the company a year earlier, kept it running. Basler Turbo Conversions remains privately held at Whitman Regional Airport, still converting a handful of retired DC-3s a year. Thomas White led the company for 2 decades before retiring in 2017, handing off to Randall Myers, continuity across 3 leaders and 3.5 decades. The company answered the question the industry had circled since the 1960s, not by building a faster airplane, but by realizing the speed was never what the DC-3 needed saving for. If the story was worth your time, hit like and subscribe and drop what you think in the comments.